My name's Chris Stepanek. I work with the Lake Champlain Sea Grant program based at the University of Vermont and UVM Extension. And I am thrilled to be able to bring you all together today to learn from Lisa Tossi, who is the Assistant Director of Communications and Outreach with Maryland Sea Grant College program. She has put together a fantastic suite of materials for us today, and we are recording this webinar, and Lisa has put together some materials to share with you all afterwards, including her Prezi and a phenomenal Google document that has links to so many different things. And so she'll probably share this. She shared with me earlier that the goal is that you all can listen and learn and reflect and not have to be scribbling down notes while she's presenting. And that she will then, I'll share, once we get the recording posted, I'll share those resources, the Prezi and the Google documents, with everybody who is registered for this webinar today. So really, really pleased that Lisa could put this together for us and take the time to share with all of us. And I'm going to turn it over to Lisa. Everybody should be muted. If you can, you can leave your videos on if you want. If you shut them off, I don't think Lisa can see you while she's presenting anyway. So it is fine if people want to shut their videos off. And we will take questions. If you have questions during her presentation that are helping you to understand something that's imminent, I'm going to be tracking the chat box for immediate questions that require her to add clarification. Otherwise, we'll take breaks in between sections of information, the way that Lisa has set it up, and we'll let you ask questions in between those and at the end of the session. So we're scheduled for 2 hours today, and it sounds like Lisa has at least that much, if not more, information to share with us. So without further ado, turn it over to Lisa again. Thanks for being with us, and I will mute myself and turn off my video.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. Good to see you virtually. It's very strange not being in front of a room of people to be able to converse with during this, but I've set it up in a way that I hope will work well for you all virtually. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Oops. Let me get to the right one for you. So first, I would just want to share the Google Doc that Chris mentioned. Basically, everything in this Prezi I have linked to and written out in this Google Doc. It's 7 pages, and it has a ton of links and resources and everything you might need, plus some extra stuff I wasn't able to fit into the presentation. And this is a living document that I keep updated as I find other things. As things change, as they do a lot in the digital world, I keep this totally updated. So I've got extra information on thoughts about accessibility, photo, video releases are all in this document. So again, my goal here today is for everyone to just kind of kick back and get inspired by some of the things in the presentation and some of the things that we've tried. And then be able to go back and look back at this Prezi or look back at the document at any time and be able to delve deeper into it. This has examples. I have a lot of video in this presentation today, and I've got links to all of the videos as well as a few other ones as well. So again, the goal is to just kind of enjoy, take everything in, and then you can access everything afterwards and share it as well if you want to share it with any of your team members. So I'm going to bring up my Prezi now and make sure I've got my sound going. All right, can everyone see my Prezi screen okay? I'm assuming, Chris, it's all good?
Yes. Yeah. When you shared your Google Doc, it was a little blurry, but this seems to be better.
Gotcha. Okay. Perfect. As we mentioned, I'm going to go through this in a couple different sections today, and then we can pause after each one to do some quick questions and then do some more thorough questions at the end. But I've split it up into a couple different subjects. First, we're going to talk about storytelling, then we're going to get a little into social media, then into photos and videos, some on infographics and immersive media, as well as where to get inspired. So it's a whole lot of information, but it's a whole lot of really fun, kind of exciting things to think about with digital storytelling. And one other thing I want to mention is almost everything that I'm sharing today is either free to use or very low cost. I know budgets are an issue. I've worked for nonprofits. I've worked in higher ed. So nothing in here is going to cost an arm and a leg to do. It's just a matter of time, basically. And most everything can be done with a basic smartphone. I also have some other options in the document about some other cameras to think about, like possibly GoPros that you can immerse in water and stick fun places. But most anything that we talk about here today on the multimedia side can be done with a smartphone. So first, a quick introduction of me. I am currently with Maryland Sea Grant program, but I had kind of a curvy career path. It's taken me a lot of different places. My undergraduate work was actually in science, in hard science and biochemistry. I enjoyed it. I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian, but then I found out that I really enjoyed telling people about science and sharing science, and that communication was kind of the best track for me. So I went back to school and did a master's in multi-platform journalism with a focus on science storytelling. And I'm actually finishing up a EDD right now on some virtual storytelling and outreach and education. So once I finished my graduate work in journalism, I actually joined AmeriCorps to do some service, and I was put in with Delaware State Parks as an environmental educator. And as you see, I quickly learned that other jobs as assigned happens in a lot of jobs, and we became pirates and had to be historical interpreters from time to time, which is always interesting. But one aspect of all of these jobs, if it was for state parks, if it was for nonprofits, if it's for Sea Grant, is storytelling is the same when you go across platforms. It's finding out what's happening, what's exciting within a program, what's interesting to the public, and sharing that in an interesting manner. So we're going to look at all different types of ways to do that today. Some things I've tried in both Delaware Sea Grant and Maryland Sea Grant, and mostly what's worked, a little bit of what hasn't worked as well. So start off with basic storytelling. Storytelling is an ancient art. It's once upon a time, from the first books to modern day, we all tell stories in many different ways. But when you think about what makes a good story, just take a moment and think to yourself, what's engaging? What really draws me in? What makes me interested when someone's telling a story? And you probably come up with a couple different traits that really resonate with you. And some of those are, it's something that pulls you in. It has an interesting character. It has someone that you want to learn more about. It resonates with you. You're able to connect it with your everyday life. It's something that piques your curiosity or something you're interested in. Has a good flow. We all know the stories that you hear sometimes from friends that kind of go all over the place before it gets to the end. But the better flow a story has, the easier it is to follow and the more engaging it is. And oftentimes they're very simple. Simplicity is key in a lot of storytelling. And then most important to us, apparently, especially for education outreach, is teach something. Everything from the fables to our modern day news is trying to get across a point or leaving somebody with a fact at the end that they walk away with. And that's extremely important for what we do. So people will always wonder, like, how do I become a good storyteller? I hear Oh, I'm no good at that. I don't like telling stories, or I don't know where to start. But the most important thing, and the thing I learned first in journalism school, coming from a science background, is pay attention to what works. Read as much as you can, watch documentaries, watch shows, listen to podcasts, listen to public radio. And when something really resonates with you, when you are driving your car and you pull into your driveway and you have that driveway moment where there's something really great story on the radio and you sit there until it gets to the end before you go inside. What worked about that story? What was really engaging about it? What did you connect with? Same with reading a story. You find yourself halfway through and you realize that you are just scrolling for 15 minutes and you've really gotten immersed in the story. What is it about that story? Go back through, read the opening, look at the people they talked to, the quotes that they used, and basically make a study out of storytelling, especially when you hear a podcast or you see a short video on YouTube and you walk away going, oh, that was really cool. Go back, watch it again, and really look at the aspects that made it interesting to you. And then you really start getting to the core of what you enjoy about storytelling and what tools you can use to do it yourself. What about science storytelling? Science storytelling is very, very similar. A good story is a good story. If it's about history, if it's about current events, if it's even about science, it's no different than other stories. It's just the characters are slightly different, or the subject matter might be a little complex, but the general rules of storytelling are just the same. My Prezi's acting up a little bit. Randy Olson has a great book. If you want a good book to start talking about communicating science, Don't Be Such a Scientist is a great one. As he says, tell simple yet true stories. No one will ever complain because he made something too easy to understand. Randy is a filmmaker as well as an author, and he started out as a tenured faculty member in marine biology. Made a switch to film at 39 years old, and has an interesting perspective because he's been in higher education. He's been the working scientist, and now he works mostly on films and communicating science. And it's a really good handbook. It's an easy read. He just recently did an update. I think it was last year was the last update for the Common Era. And now that we are really facing some higher anti-science sentiment, or it's more out in the open, that touches on that as well. So that's a really a great book to start with. But basics, sorry, this is really acting up. Sorry. Let me get back to where I need to be. There we go. The basics for successful science communication boils down to this. Basically, for a lot of the work that we do in Sea Grant, in nonprofits, a lot of it is outreach and education to the general public. And in doing so, a good starting place is assuming that your audience knows nothing. Start at that kind of ground level and think about the best ways to break it down and really keep it simple. Also, in this day and age, we've got attention spans that are much shorter than they used to be, and we've got a lot of information coming at us at all different directions. So finding an engaging hook, finding that kind of fun fact, that interesting character to pull people in, to get them interested, is always a good thing to think about at the start. Think about finding that kind of attention-getting start to pull people in and then back into the science. Start with the good story and then pull the science in as you go along. And anytime you can illustrate, if possible, we are in a very visually focused society these days. Anytime you've got a strong photograph, infographic that you can pull in to get attention, those types of visuals are very important. And then share on appropriate channels. We'll talk more about social media shortly. But it's also good to think about when you're telling this story, if you're doing a blog post, how can you then share the blog post out in different ways? If you have a great photo that goes with it, think about multitasking with the different pieces of the story. You've got a well-written post with a beautiful photo. How can you then use that photo on social media to pull people in to make them click on that blog post? So these are the basics to get folks engaged and for thinking about it at the start. As I mentioned, basically today we're going to be talking about the general public, the folks for most of the public outreach, trying to connect them to the work that we're doing. In doing that, jargon is really something to shy away from. If you want to see people's eyes glaze over real quick, start with some really 4 and 5 syllable words, and you've lost them at the get-go. What I like to do is think about email. I love my family to death, but none of them are into science. They all kind of think I'm crazy. I've got a father who's a social worker, a mother who's a retired art teacher, my husband's an artist, and my sister's a lawyer. So whenever I think about some stories, I start with thinking about, okay, I'm going to send an email to my family members. How am I going to get them interested in what I want to tell them about? And I start at that very basic email. How do I start that email? How would I make my dad go, oh, that's kind of cool, and pick up the phone and call to find out more? So find that kind of touch point or that friend to bounce ideas off of. And that's always a good start. In thinking about it again, keeping the jargon out of it, keep it very simple. English is better than Latin. You don't exterminate, you kill. You don't salivate, you drool. You don't conflagrate, you burn. Very simple, punchy words are much easier for folks to understand and get excited about. And they have that action too that can be really engaging. Tim Raffer is a writer for Guardian. I've always liked this quote. Moses did not say to Pharaoh, the consequence of non-release of one particular subject ethnic population could result in ultimately some kind of algal manifestation in the main river basin with unforeseen outcomes for flora and fauna, not excluding consumer services. That's first one is very jargony, it's very sciencey. But no, he said, the waters in which the river shall be turned to blood, and the fish that's in the river shall die, and the river shall stink. That's the plain English, the punchy words. It gets it across very succinctly and quickly with those action words. There's some easy ways to test your text. Whether you're writing a piece, you can actually do a couple different things to see at what reading level or what grade level your text is at, which is very helpful. Word actually has a tool called the Flesch-Kincaid grade level that will look at the text in a Word document and then tell you at what level it is. They used to say for the general public, you wanted about the 8th grade level. They're bouncing that down to about the 6th grade level now. So it's a very quick way to look at text and see kind of what level you're at. There's also a few others that I put in my document that you can cut and paste into some web tools. One's called Readability. And it just gives you a quick way to check where you're at, where you might need to simplify. Another fun one is the Splasho.com Upgoer 5. This one is more for fun, but it kind of gives you an idea of where your hotspots might be. If any of you are familiar with the comic XKCD, it's kind of the nerdy, sciencey comic. But they made this tool that's a lot of fun to use, in which you can paste your text into the box, and it strips out all the words that are not the 1,000 most used words in the English language. In the explanation here, they say the 1,000 most used words because 1,000 isn't one of them. So it's a lot of fun to see. You see quickly how much of your text disappears, but it also gives you an idea if you've got a really hot spot in your text where you've got a lot of jargony language, and you can see exactly where that might be to help you kind of focus in and simplify. When you go on to their site, they have a really fun diagram of the Saturn V rocket, which they've redone the diagram using the 1,000 most used words. So it's pretty funny to go through and read how much they had to simplify it. The part that stays on the other world, it's still there. Door, chairs, people box. So it gives you an idea of kind of how much you have to simplify sometimes in a fun way. So once you know who you're talking to, you really need to think about what is the story you're trying to tell? What is the main factoid, the main kernel of understanding you want folks to leave with after they watch your video or they read your blog post. And you need to think about where is there an opportunity to connect. And that's where it's really hard sometimes in our day-to-day work, stepping out of that internal view of your organization and the people you're talking to, because you're all talking at the same level of complexity, and taking that step back and thinking about how you can create a story that will resonate with that audience, that connects them to their everyday life, that makes them interested in how this might affect them or why they should be interested in it. And that really can be challenging at times, again, when we're all in meetings and then talking about the research. But again, taking that moment to step back and thinking about friends and family and thinking about how a project might connect with the folks who it's going to impact. And then just thinking about the goals that we've kind of mentioned. You want it to be interesting, you want it to engage, you want it to connect, you want it to be useful. You want folks to walk away with something that they can use or that they can share with others to build interest about what you're doing. And again, being short. It used to be very long form journalism was key, but these days with social media, with video, with blogs, brevity is really, really useful for a lot of these in both grabbing and holding folks' attention. So in Maryland Sea Grant, for some of the things that we've been tackling on the blog, some of them are quite complex. So instead of doing a 1,500 to 2,000 word blog post that we might have done in the past, we look at ways that we can block them up into series and make them more 400 to 500 words with pictures. And then we can have, we can build on the series and share it out in different ways as well. So when somebody clicks on it, they're not intimidated by a wall of text. They can see that it's brief, it's illustrated, and then if it's something that really engages with them, they see that more's coming because we announce it's part of the series, and we've got more that'll be of interest. Another quote I like: "There's no such thing as boring knowledge, only boring presentation." It's just a matter of figuring out how are we sharing this. So opening this story, when you think about your hook, how are you making that connection? We think of some famous ones. First one, I love Peanuts. It was a dark and stormy night. We all know that opening line, but as Linus says here, has a very exciting beginning. Good luck with the second sentence. Sometimes it can take you a long time to figure out that that hook. Or sometimes I found that I might put together a rough draft of a video or write a whole post before I figure out what that first sentence is. But it's really important to have that hook. Some famous ones here is The Best of Times, It Was Worst of Times, Call Me Ishmael from Moby Dick. It piques your curiosity. You want to know more. Another great book on writing is by Stephen King. I am in no means a horror book reader. I have not read any of his other books, but I have read this one because it's just a gem on good storytelling. You can tell by his success about he's prolific in the number of books he's put out. He's very successful because he's an incredible storyteller. And I think this quote just builds on that. There are all sorts of theories and ideas about what constitutes a great opening line, but it's a tricky thing to get scientific about it. It's like trying to catch moonbeams in a jar. But there's one thing I'm sure about: an opening line should invite the reader to begin the story. It should say, listen, come in here. You want to know about this. And that's especially true for science communication. It's like, hey, come join me. This is really cool. You're going to want to learn more about this. And again, these books I've linked in the document as well, but that's just an excellent book. One of our best science communicators right now is Ed Yong. He writes for The Atlantic. He is doing an incredible and some incredible stories on the coronavirus situation for The Atlantic, which you can all read. They've made all of their COVID-19 reporting free to access. But here's one of my favorite opening lines from him. If you lean over the side of a boat and scoop up some water of a jug, you've just taken a census of the ocean. A simple thing. We've all been out on boats and you think about scooping up the water, and then suddenly you have a census of the ocean. What is that? What's in there? How have I done that? It piques your curiosity. You can also have fun with it. Another fun one. These days, Paul Seswada, the director of Gotham Whale, often finds himself bobbing in the waters off Brooklyn, trying to record the sounds of flatulent fish. Piques your curiosity. There's someone out there bobbing in the water, trying to record fish farting. Why? Why is somebody doing that? It's, again, you bring them in with a hook, you pique the curiosity, and then you kind of back into the science and the research and exactly why they're interested in fish farts. So I have a couple examples here throughout. I've put in a couple of short films and movies, also kind of as good break points. These next two videos are about 4 minutes long each. So it's also a good point to, if you need to grab a little more coffee. I've put these throughout, but this first one was a really well done piece on some climate science and particularly citizen science. But as you can see here, it uses that character. It uses an interesting personality as a hook and then gets into the science. So we're going to watch this one first, and hopefully you can hear sound as I play it.
Have you ever wondered, if you watched the snow long enough, what stories it might tell? There is someone who has done it. His name is Billy Barr.
I spell it small B-I-L-L-Y, small B-A-R-R.
Some people call him the Snow Guardian. He lives in a cabin out in the woods.
Picture this. It's a snowy day, it's dark and cold, and you make a fire and you're sitting by the fire and you're reading with a cup of tea, and it goes on for 9 months.
Billy lives alone in this house he helped build. Here he grows his garden, has an impressive hat collection, loves cricket, and dreams of Bollywood. Every couple of weeks, he skis back into the nearest town for supplies. He's been doing this for more than 40 winters. But Billy does a little more than just read and drink tea. For those 40 winters, Billy has kept a meticulous record of snow in his little part of the world.
Okay, mark it said February 26, 1978, 10 and a half inches of snow that day. January 20th, minus 11 and a half. April 28th, 1980, high was 41. Ooh, that's nice. In 1997, 1/2 inch new snow. A weasel was roaming around inside the shack. Damn, the birds were back. I lived in an 8 by 10 foot old shack. It had no electricity, no water, and I had nothing, and I was just there all day. The main thing I interacted with was the weather and the animals. So I started recording things just because there was something to do. I had nothing to prove, no goals, no anything. So actually a researcher at the lab wanted to look at it. And then once he started looking at it scientifically, then all of a sudden, like, these decades worth of data were being used for more than my own curiosity.
Billy has done this every day, twice a day, all winter long.
I'd keep going until the snow was gone. And if it snowed, I would record that no matter when. The trend I see is that we're getting a permanent snowpack later, and we get to bare ground sooner. We'll have years where there was a lot of snow on the ground, and then we lost snow sooner than years that had a lot less snow, just because it's a lot warmer now.
In a normal winter, you'd expect to have 4 to 5 record high temperatures. Last year, Billy recorded 36.
Not only is it a lot warmer, we're getting a lot of dust blowing in. As soon as you get dust on the snow, it melts like that. You're talking about the snowpack, the water supply for most of the Southwest. I'm not real hopeful just because I don't know how you reverse something like that.
As we leave Colorado behind, Billy imparts one last bit of advice.
It's like anything else. You know, I learned to ski to get around. I learned how to ski better so I wouldn't fall down all the time. Over a period of time, I kind of learned how to survive in this environment. Actually, learning to fall is probably the most important thing. If you're going to fall, sit. A lot easier falling on your butt than on your face.
So that was just a fun example of sometimes in the citizen science side of things, you get some really interesting people taking part and everyday people that are making a difference through their contribution in the citizen science aspect of things. And a lot of times it's easier for folks to connect with someone like Billy Bob than it might be with a scientist, and they see a white coat and they're just like, ah. And so that's just an example of putting character first and putting the personality out and connecting in a kind of personal way before getting into the nitty gritty of the work or the science or the data. A while back, we did a video with Delaware Sea Grant with the water monitoring volunteers there, and we had some absolutely great volunteers, and their personalities really shone through. So most of the interviews were with them because they had this passion for what they were doing and what they were seeing, described what it was like when they took samples out there and the changes they were seeing. And that passion really showed through and was a good connecting point for that piece, kind of like Billy Bob. And then this is another about 4-minute example of taking a something that people are used to seeing and a format that they are very familiar with, and having some fun with it, and putting a little different spin on it to get attention about an issue. So this is a faux documentary on the majestic plastic bag.
The open plains of the asphalt jungle, home to many creatures great and small, and the pupping ground for one of the most clever and illustrious creatures, the plastic bag. Today we explore the cycle of life for this curious creature, the plastic bag, on its migration to its home, the Pacific Ocean. Once released into the wild, the plastic bag is unsure of itself. It falters at first, but soon, with some help from the wind, the bag will be airborne. This flight will be the first in its long journey towards its final destination, the garbage patch in the heart of the Pacific Ocean. Using the wind to guide it, the plastic bag moves across the city through the air. A city park. This park may at first seem an idyllic place for the plastic bag, but danger lurks round every corner. Here it will encounter many enemies, including one of the most dangerous, park services. Poor little fellow. Looks like his journey ends here. Meanwhile, our little bag has encountered one of nature's most deadly killers, the teacup Yorkie. Once the Yorkie has locked onto its victim, there's very little hope of survival. But using its superior size and deft maneuvering, our bag manages to escape the Yorkie's talons and flee for its life. Over the course of its miraculous migration, the plastic bag will cover vast distances through neighborhoods, across parks, and down city streets. It is now nightfall, and our highly advanced night vision cameras have managed to capture for the first time in history a plastic bag in pitch black. Phenomenal. The vast cement rivers of California, home to literally dozens of animals. Many plastic bags will not make it out of here. The reeds and branches will see to that. As at home in water as it is on land or in the air, the bag's natural buoyancy makes it an excellent swimmer. It's close now, and it can feel it. At last, the bag has reached the gateway to the open sea. Careful to avoid the mouths of hungry sea life that feed on the helpless plastic, the bag will travel hundreds of miles to join the thriving community of plastic known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. The Garbage Patch is a veritable plastic oasis where millions of tons of plastic garbage remain trapped by the currents. It is said to be twice the size of Texas. Never actually biodegrading, here the plastic bag can live indefinitely, peacefully coexisting with billions of other petroleum species before breaking into ever tinier plastic pieces, thus completing the plastic cycle of life.
So just a couple examples of some fun different ways to kind of think outside the box for communicating things in a way that are engaging and familiar to general public. If you have someone on your staff that sounds like David Attenborough, then even better. So that's the basics on the storytelling before going to the talking about social media and imagery. Chris, were there any questions we could address?
There were none written into the chat. If I will open it up, if folks want to ask questions in the chat, we can put them in there right now.
Give it a quick moment. Give everyone a quick moment to stretch. All right.
Sorry, I have too many screens. There's a couple questions. So,
okay.
So one is there any debate or counter viewpoints on simple language?
It's a constant struggle. It's a lot of times in our office, I know it's a lot of going back and forth with in our communications when we have scientists review and then come back, trying to put some of the larger words back in and saying, well, it's really incorrect if you say it this way. We need to have these terms in there to make sure that it's precise. So it's a constant challenge, and it requires a lot of discussion and understanding on both sides, particularly when translating some of the more complex research. But oftentimes just having an open communication with the researchers and the scientists can usually get to a place where you both feel comfortable, and really translating that science can be the hardest part, because you want to make sure it's not too simplistic, that you are that you're sharing it in its full complexity and an easy way to understand. So it's often, it's kind of a seesaw, where we might break it down very simply and then bring it back up. And then you find a place where it's even, but it requires open lines of communication, a lot of understanding on both sides. So we try to build in a good amount of time, especially for some of the longer pieces and stuff that's published like in the magazine, for making sure we have enough time to have those conversations.
Thanks, Lisa. I've got two more questions. One of them is asking, Tristan says, I'd be curious about your stance on the usual scientific poster, and then goes on to say the scientific paper with some graphs as the format, and coming from a landscape architecture undergraduate and in the graduate work attempting to change this culture locally.
Yeah, so there's been an ongoing conversation about the scientific poster. And there was a, and I can add it to the document, I think it was last year or maybe the year before, there was someone that introduced this whole new rethinking of the scientific poster and how to reimagine it. And that resulted in a lot of debate. The last few conferences I was at, I didn't see I saw maybe a few of them that took this different view, where it was more of a very visual poster with a QR code with all the details. So it's very hard to change something that's so ingrained into a culture like the posters you see at conferences. They have become more visual. I think it's a kind of a slow metamorphosis of the format, but for most of the population, it's way too hard to comprehend or understand, and that's job security for us in SciComm in taking those papers and taking those posters and breaking them down and making them into something that's more public friendly. But there are, particularly with the younger generation of scientists that are more into social media, there is a lot of interest in kind of translating that and making it simpler, going more to infographic style on some of that research and understanding the importance of that. So it's a slow transition, but there are changes happening.
Do you want to take one more? I have one
Sure.
more. Okay, so I'll mention Karina put in a nice resource of a TED Talk in the chat for folks, Talk Nerdy to Me. And then Tyler has a question that relates back to the first question. Is there a risk of losing credibility with other scientific organizations while using simple language?
There is, but in a lot of what we do, we try to also provide links for folks to dive deeper. So you can break it down, you can keep it simpler, but then provide the links and the context and the resources along with your communications. So those who want to delve deeper or look at the research paper have that and have it easily accessible. So in the blog post, if we're talking about a report that came out, like we have one of our aquaculture extension agents has one coming out on aquaculture, oyster aquaculture, comparing different equipment. We talk very generally about the work, but then we link directly to the report to make it very accessible. So on the surface level, keep it simple, but then provide the resources and the links to make it easily accessible for those who want to get more into the nitty-gritty.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah.
I think that's all that I've seen pop up here.
All right, then we will get into social media. Social media, we could probably spend a couple days on that, but I'm just kind of go through some of the basics and what we found has worked for our program. Each platform is very different. If anyone's on social, you probably saw this meme going around a while back on how we all present ourselves in different ways on different platforms. And it's kind of the same with organizations as well. There's a vast variety from LinkedIn, which is super professional, to TikTok, which is kind of much younger, very video based. But we found what works best for us currently. We're on the Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram platforms. We use our posts kind of interchangeably between those three, but we change them up slightly for each platform due to some of their differences. So Instagram is kind of the keystone for us. It's easy to share from Instagram onto both Twitter and Facebook with some tweaks. And it tends to be the most visually appealing. It's also kind of the safest place for folks to enjoy content. In this political climate, Facebook and Twitter can be kind of stressful to look at feeds there sometimes. So Instagram is kind of a happy place where it's mostly just beautiful pictures and short video. So we use that primarily while linking to the other ones. And I'm just going to share this short video talking about kind of the digital revolution in communication. This is done by a guy who goes by the handle Equalman. He does a lot, it's actually his last name, Equalman, but he does a lot in digital marketing and communications. So each year he pulls together some really interesting statistics on the use of digital communication and what the trends are. And if you go to this video on YouTube, he links all the resources that he pulls these statistics from. And those are all really good ones to look at to keep on top of trends. So this is the overview he did at the end of last year to give you an idea of where things are. So that just kind of gives you an idea of, I've been watching kind of his work for a couple years now, and each year video goes up and up and up. And the way folks are consuming things, consuming them in different ways, on more and more on the phone. Most everything's on the phone anymore, tablet. So thinking about the way that folks are consuming information and how they're doing it, and thinking about that attention span of 7 seconds. You've got that 7 seconds to kind of slow their scroll or hook them in, are really important considerations when you're thinking about trying to get your stories out there in these different ways. And as I mentioned, there's a wide variety of different platforms you can be on, of ways to share your information. As I mentioned, we do 3. We're also on LinkedIn, where we share jobs, and we're trying to connect more with some alumni and like the Knauss Fellows and such. But it can be a lot. So it's not something to get overwhelmed by. You can make things as simple as works for you, or more complex if you really want to get into some of these different platforms much deeper. But it's important to just remember, you don't have to do it all. You don't want it to not be fun, because it can be overwhelming if you do try to jump on everything and make content for it all. And that takes the kind of social and fun aspect out of it. So I'm figuring out what's best for you. The goal of social media is basically encouraging participation and ramping up interest, and raising awareness of what you're doing, of sharing content that supports your organization and your work, as well as the social aspect, the networking aspect. When you're on there, on different social media platforms, there's usually other organizations that you work closely with that have different audiences. And it's a great way to connect with those different organizations, connect with some of the researchers, the other institutions that might be working on some of your projects, and extending your reach through social media to their networks and vice versa. That's the whole social side of it, is that you're able to reach others and connect with others that you might not otherwise be able to. And when it works great. So getting started, the best way to get started in social media, I just say lurk. Make a handle, make a profile that's not necessarily your work. something personal, just get on there and look around and see what folks are doing. Look at other organizations, look at other researchers or outreach people. See what they're doing, see what they're sharing, see what conversations they're having on there, and see what works. And then you can also experiment. A whole lot of what we've done both at Delaware Sea Grant and Maryland Sea Grant is trying things, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and then tweaking our strategy and moving on. This stuff is always changing. You kind of figure it out as you go, basically. And you can also see what's trending, and that can be a lot of fun to jump in and expand your audience as well. I have a picture here from Delaware Sea Grant that's the education specialist. Now he's in charge of the extension, the Marine Advisory Service. There's Chris Patrone. When Jurassic Park came out, the last movie, there's a hilarious scene where the main character was controlling the velociraptors by just standing there with his hands out. And a bunch of zookeepers started jumping on board by doing the same pose with what other animals that they were taking care of, and using the hashtag Jurassic Zookeeper. So we jumped on that. Full disclosure, not all of those horseshoe crabs were alive, but we had a couple live horseshoe crabs, and we had a couple shells that we put out, and we jumped on that hashtag, connecting our love of horseshoe crabs in the Delaware Bay, and got some new followers out of it, because folks that were following that hashtag saw it and might have connected with Delaware, might have connected with the horseshoe crabs, but it was a fun way to jump on a trend and take part. And he even dressed up in his Coast Day shirt, which is a big event there that kind of worked that angle as well. But you can also look at a lot of great data sources to see what's working on different social platforms, what the audiences are like on different social platforms. And Pew Research does a really good job of tracking social marketing and social media and communications. I have a link to the landing page for some of their studies. That's good to keep an eye on, because they are looking at how, breaking down how folks are using different platforms like YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and giving you the demographics of who's there, who's active on it, in all different aspects: gender, race, income, education. And if you're looking to maybe attract a different group, then maybe that platform isn't for you. This is some recent numbers that they put up on Twitter, and they found that Twitter, maybe I think it was like 10 or 12% of people have Twitter accounts, but about 80% of the content are coming from about 10% of that. So it's actually a very narrow audience. There are some great things about Twitter. There's a very active science community on there. But when you start looking at the numbers and seeing what kind of percentage of folks are actually using it, and you're looking to kind of delve into one major social media platform, maybe that's not the audience you're looking for, so maybe another platform works well. So Pew Research is a really good place to keep on top of those trends. But basically for us, anything we do on social media, we think about everything we want to do, we post with purpose. Everything that we put out there, we are either connecting back to our mission, highlighting something that we're doing, making something that's engaging for folks to connect with us about a particular project, or announcing a research find. So it's not just, you know, here's a cool fish, or, you know, we got together and saw each other today. Every post has a purpose and is well researched. It's just a picture of our Instagram feed from not too long ago. One of the posts that we did, we found this installation behind our office that was actually collecting and looking at waste behind a tributary we had behind our office. So there's a hashtag called What Is It Wednesday. We used that, we put it up, we had people guess what it was. And we got a lot of engagement on this, a lot of conversations with different folks. We were able to have some conversations with users we hadn't chatted with before. And we were also able to connect them to some of the watershed work that we were doing. So this was a high engagement post using some picture that piques curiosity, asking folks for their opinion on what it could be, and then starting a conversation. So that's what it looked like on Instagram. This is what it looked like on Facebook. Again, because we shared to the different platforms. And again, it was a good way to connect and engage with folks in different ways. We have different audiences on Instagram that we do on Facebook. So we were definitely connecting with different people. I thought a less sexy version of Mr. Trash Wheel was a pretty funny comment, which started another conversation.
It's pretty blurry for us right now, Lisa. So if you specific ones you want us to see or to know about, you'll have to read them to us because it's not coming through.
Gotcha. Huh. Sorry about that. Can you see the pictures okay?
The pictures are okay. The words are definitely not readable. And as somebody points out, if the screen stays still for a minute, it's like it just takes a minute for it to catch up. The bandwidth is just a little bit slow.
Bandwidth issues. Gotcha. Let me get it to this point.
Oh yeah, because it's clear right now.
Okay. This one is just an example of something we shared about an opportunity, and we had a whole lot of shares talking about the social aspect of things. This was about our research experiences for undergraduates that we hold each summer. And we had over 33 shares on our post itself. And we were able to go through and see what some of the other programs were that shared it, be able to answer questions on other posts, as well as connect to some of the groups. There was a group of Black student scuba divers that we had never connected with before that shared it, and I was able to reach out to them to give them more information. And then the whole snowball effect of social is also seeing the shares on others. So on here, there's a scientific group that also shared it 17 times. No Education shared it 21 times. So we had a bunch of shares on our original ones, but then those shares had shares. And it really got we ended up reaching over 4,000 people with that post due to that social aspect, and other folks seeing it and sharing it to their own networks. Facebook is very good for that. Facebook is also very good for creating and sharing events. One of our watershed, couple of our watershed specialists had some events that we put up event pages for that we were able to share out. And then we can also look at some of the analytics for who saw and who connected with the events, which can be shared with the outreach and extension folks, as well, to get an idea of what kind of audiences were reached through the Facebook page. Hashtags are another really good way to both find and share information on social media. They're now used across all platforms, I think. They started on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook adopted them, even LinkedIn uses them now. But it's a great way to categorize content. You just think of it as a search term that you can search for different hashtags within a feed to find other information on that topic. Or if you know that folks are interested in science communication and you share out something that's related to science communication, you can add the hashtag SciComm, and then anyone who's following that hashtag would see it as well. So it's a good way to both find and share information to different audiences. It's basics of it, you just use it right before a word or phrase. Without any spaces or punctuation. It takes anything up to a space or a punctuation, and that's the hashtag. You can be as general as you want, like hashtag dog, or specific as you want, if you want a very specific audience, like bulldog puppy. It's something else that you can search and experiment with, and you can also create your own around a special project or special event to help curate all the information that was shared out about that. So in Delaware, we use the hashtag DE Coast Day for the annual open house. That was the first Sunday of every October. And then we could keep a search column open and gather all the information that people shared from that day. They could also ask questions about Coast Day using that hashtag we kept on top of. And it was a way for folks to also share pictures and experiences as well. And I'll talk about ways you can curate that as well. So one hashtag we came up with recently, thanks to the coronavirus, was MDSG Backyard Ecology. Suddenly in March, we all found ourselves teleworking, and our office and our extension agents are spread throughout Maryland. I am on the Atlantic coast near Ocean City, Maryland. Our education, assistant director for education, is all the way over in Western Maryland. We've got a ton of folks in between. So we were all stuck at home, and we're all stuck in our own backyards during quarantine. And we're trying to think of what can we do on social media that's meaningful, that connects to our mission, and that's useful for folks. So we came up with this Maryland Sea Grant Backyard Ecology tag. And folks basically in our office and an extension, each week I asked for pictures, and they would send me what they were seeing in their garden, in their backyard, and their little walks around the neighborhood. And we'd write up educational posts about it because other folks were stuck around the state in their own backyards and might be seeing this as well. And then we could connect it back to our mission of clean watersheds and improving water quality and what's invasive in the garden versus what makes a good native plant garden. So it was a fun thing that we could all take part of from our own homes and connect to people in their own homes, since we're all stuck in the same situation in the state. And it's gone really well. We've continued it because we've gotten some really good feedback, some really good questions. The one on the bottom right on marsh hibiscus, one of our writers put together for me the other day. It's a short video that shows it, and it's gotten over 25 shares on Facebook. It's resulted in some questions that folks want help with their own backyard and what to plant that I've been able to push out to some of our extension agents and have some engagement there. So it was something that we came up thanks to COVID, and it was just an engaging way that we could use social media when we weren't out actually doing any field work or had any other pictures to share. That's worked really well. We've also done a Tributary Tuesday, where each Tuesday we're sharing a different tributary in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, because we all have a variety of them around us across the state and are sharing different aspects of the challenges of each tributary and how everything is connected back to the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So in thinking about hashtags, this is just a fun little skit as a quick mental break and to keep in mind when using hashtags. Again, when I say post with purpose, you should use everything judiciously and think about the main topics in your post that should have a tag on it, like watershed or Chesapeake Bay or the name of a plant, and not hashtag every single word because it's hard to read and it turns people off. So just think of Jimmy here when you're using your hashtags.
Hey, Justin, what's up?
Not much, Jimmy. Hashtag chillin'. What's up with you?
Just been busy working. Hashtag rise and grind. Hashtag is it Friday yet?
Hey, check it out. I brought you some cookies. Hashtag homemade. Hashtag oatmeal raisin. Hashtag show me the cookie.
Sweet. Hashtag don't mind if I don't. Pretty good. Hashtag getting my cookie on. Hashtag I'm the real cookie monster. Hashtag no, 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 no.
Delicious, right? Hashtag I did it all for the cookie. Hashtag LOL.
Hashtag classic. By the way, did you catch last week's episode of Duck Dynasty? Hashtag quack quack.
Nah, lately I've mostly been watching Netflix. Hashtag Orange is the New Black.
Oh, nice. I've been watching a lot of Barney the Dinosaur. Hashtag purple is the new black. Hashtag I love you, you love me, we're a happy family. Hashtag I'm 38. Hashtag dinosaurs. Hashtag how do they go extinct? Hashtag meteor. Hashtag ice age. Hashtag speaking of ice age, I just watched Ice Age on demand the other day. Hashtag funny. Hashtag Ray Romano. Hashtag Deborah. Hey, by the way, Halloween's only like a month away.
I know.
I mean, do you know where you're gonna be at? Hashtag life decisions. Hashtag sexy ghost.
I think I'm gonna go as a Ninja Turtle. Hashtag gotta be Raphael. Hashtag Leonardo sucks. Hashtag the turtle, not the Italian Renaissance painter. Hashtag Mona Lisa. Hashtag is she smiling? Hashtag speaking of smiling, I just saw my dentist. Hashtag bling. Hashtag dental care. Hashtag cavity free. Hashtag that's how we do. Hashtag we go hard. Hashtag and we can't stop.
Hashtag we won't stop.
Hashtag we run this.
Hashtag true players for life.
Hashtag is it worth it or let me work it.
Hashtag put my thing down, flip it, then reverse it.
Hashtag is your women never done yet. Hashtag is your women never done yet.
Hey guys,
Yeah, Quest?
What's up?
hashtag shut the up.
That got my voice back. Sorry about my dog barking. Think somebody knocked on the door. But just a fun little thing to think about not using the hashtags too much because it can become annoying. A couple other quick things on social. There's some curation tools out there that are really great for gathering information across social platforms. Whether you're pulling together things about a current event or if you're having a discussion that's using a particular hashtag, or even collaborating on a topic. You'll see this a lot of times if there's a big hurricane coming. Everyone will use, the Weather Channel will use a particular hashtag for a storm and ask people to share pictures, and then they'll curate pictures from throughout the storm event from users. There used to be a really good tool called Storify that actually went away because it got bought up by Adobe and put into some of their content. But there is one called Wakelet now, which has kind of replaced Storify in the ability to do this. Again, this is a free tool, and it's a great way to pull together a story in which you have posts on different platforms. You can pull a link from a story, a tweet from a feed, a picture from Instagram, and compile them all into one story. And this will show you how that works.
So the web is full of content, and this is growing every day. Sometimes the best content can get buried in no time at all, and it can be hard for people to find this content, find it again, and then share it. So rather than losing the content that matters, you can save, organize, and share it with Wakelet. Anything from the web can be saved in Wakelet. Articles, tweets, Instagram posts, YouTube videos, maps, Spotify playlists, and so much more. And once you've organized your content into collections, you can reorder the content however you want, add your own notes and images, and then tell a story with it. You can keep your collections private, make them unlisted, or make them public and share them with the world. You can customize your collections however you like, and even invite people to collaborate with you on collections that you've created. Wakelet can be used for anything you like. Save articles to read later, tell stories, build visual portfolios, gather research, plan your next break, archive Twitter chats, and promote people, events, and ideas. And it's completely free to use. So sign up today to get started.
So on Wakelet, we've used it to gather all of our backyard ecology posts since spring, and then we can share everything in one link. So we have a full collection of all of those posts. At Delaware Sea Grant, what we did is we pulled together user-generated stories on Coast Day, in that we pulled everything that had used the hashtag DE Coast Day, and we could update it throughout the day and share it out. And all the pictures and posts were from folks that were there doing different things, sharing their experiences, and it gave a voice to everybody that was there. We actually would start it a couple days before to help build up excitement, and then keep everything going in reverse chronological order. So the newest content was always up top. Like you see here, we've got our newest post up top, and as you scroll down, you kind of go back in the seasons. But it's a fun way if you are running a program or an event and you're very busy throughout the day and you are not able to take pictures or share anything about it because of other responsibilities. You can create a hashtag around the event, ask people to share a favorite picture or an experience throughout, and then you can collate everything and share it out as one concise story. These can also be embedded within websites as well, which is nice. Oops, sorry. And then real quick, a few other things on social media. It's a really good way to make connections with others, particularly back in the time when we could actually see one another at conferences, and stay connected. It's a way, this is a TweetDeck feed of what I work off of. I kind of use as a networking hub because I can have a column from different events and the hashtags and stay connected with people and what's still coming out of those events by following those hashtags or having conversations and messages from people I meet there. So it's just another way to stay connected, or if you see some particular work you're interested in, or someone that might be good as a speaker, a way to easily reach out and connect and keep a conversation going. Polling is another thing that's possible on social media, on both Twitter and Instagram and actually Facebook. There are some easy ways to do some quick polls, asking simple yes or no or this or that questions, or asking if there are particular topics that people are interested in for outreach. It's not scientific, but it's a good way of gauging understanding and interest in different things. And if you have a more formal poll that's going out, it's also on SurveyMonkey or through your university or institution. Social is also a great way to connect with some different groups to get input by sharing it on those platforms as well. Again, in that social aspect, you can reach out on the tweet on the right to particular people who might have contacts in within their following that might be interested in the survey or might be good to capture. So it's a good way to share information. And then I mentioned analytics earlier with the Facebook events. All of these social media platforms over the past few years have really upped their back end analytics on all of these. So it's when you are trying to measure what works, you no longer have to say, oh, there had a number of likes, or we've got this many followers. Those aren't true measures of engagement. Now you can look into the back end of Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and really kind of dive into the most successful posts and try to understand why they were successful, as well as the ones that really don't work. So I generally do this every quarter, very thoroughly go through and pull quarterly reports and then tweak strategy based on that. Also look kind of quickly at the end of each month. Or if there's a particular post that seems to be doing really well, I'll dive into it then to kind of get a feel for what's happening or why it seems to really be resonating. But this is just a quick example of the Twitter backend, where it has different levels of engagement. So we can see how many people saw it in the feed, how many people actually engaged with it, how many people actually clicked on the link or clicked on the picture, how many shares, likes, how many people then went to your profile or followed you after seeing a tweet. And it's the same on the other platforms as well. YouTube is especially good in that you can actually look at each video and you can look at viewer attention. You can see the attention span. You can play your video on their back end, and it has a graph on top of it, and you can actually see where you lose people, where people fall off, how many people make it to the end. And then look and see what's happening at that point in the video where you lose 50% of the viewers. Was it a talking head? Did it get more complex? And you can learn a lot by looking at these numbers. And as I said, they keep improving and getting easier and easier to pull and look at quickly and understand, and then also use in your metrics for communications and engagement. So before going to visuals, do we have any quick questions?
There's one that came a little bit ago, yeah. So it has to do with posting on social media from Zoe. Once the post is posted and the public is commenting / asking questions, what does moderating replies to those comments look like, and what are some of the challenges for Instagram or Facebook?
It's an important consideration. I tend to, if I do a what is it Wednesday, if I do a question, then I am going to make sure that I post it kind of at the beginning of the day so I can keep an eye on it throughout the day. A lot of times some of the conversations will happen organically, and you'll see people kind of answering each other, which is fun to see too. And you'll see other connections happening. But being strategic about your bandwidth and how much you can keep an eye on things and be part of the conversation is very important. You don't want to put a big question up on Friday afternoon unless you want to spend the weekend kind of checking in. And that's not good for your sanity. There's also some tools like on Facebook, on the messages, you can put on away messages. If somebody has questions, they immediately get a response saying, we're not in office right now, but we'll be back Monday at 9 a.m. to answer your question. So there's some tools like that as well. But definitely thinking strategically and factoring in that aspect of connecting and responding with how much you post and what type of posts you put up.
Thank you. I just posted a little in the chat to see if anybody else had other questions about social media that they wanted to ask before we move on to the next section.
All right. Just quickly going into pictures, the old adage, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And this was a winner in the wildlife category last year. And kind of sums up kind of our plastic pollution problem in the oceans. But most of all, it's engaging. You stop, you look at it, and you wonder what's happening there. And there's a huge story behind that. But a lot of times the picture can be the touch point for connecting with folks about work or a story. Some quick considerations I wanted to touch on and just mention that's in the Google document. Whenever you're talking about photos and video, copyright and releases are very important. I've put a lot of detail in the document about that, about some considerations. You know, the easiest way to be sure you have copyright is that you took the picture or video yourself. But there are some great free resources for images and video, and I've listed quite a few of them in the document as well, where they are free for public use. Photo releases are important as well for folks outside your organization, thinking about folks that might be in an event. particularly children under 18. You always want to get parental permission. You have to talk to your institution or your group about how they want to handle that as well. And there is a link in the document as well as kind of a starting point for a good photo release. But those are things to consider about with the visuals. And then I wanted to touch on pandemics as well, because that's added a whole new level of thought process to communications work. In the center is our multimedia intern, Logan, this summer. He's just been doing an awesome job, even though it's been mostly by telecommute. He's doing a film project this summer, and we have the whole COVID situation of how do we go out and safely talk to people for a film about a community that's cleaning up a local pond and working with our extension agents. So half the summer was spent coming up with a protocol, checking the protocol of our institution, making sure we've covered all the bases of how we do this safely for everyone involved, making sure everybody's comfortable with the process. And it's led to a whole new bag being added to my camera kit with the Lysol, the wipes, extra sanitizer. We take our temperatures beforehand. But we came up with a very precise protocol that we check with the folks that we're interacting with beforehand to make sure they're comfortable. We track everything. We track our temperatures, exactly where we went, what time we went, what time that the people we talked to gave permission, that our administration gave permission. So it's added a whole nother level of complexity. But we have our list of requirements and kind of a spreadsheet that we use for tracking now. And we do everything outside in open air. The middle picture is Logan actually trying to get some photos of archival photos on the towel in the middle of a park, because that was the safest and best way we could do it. So if anyone's struggling with that, we've kind of been through it this summer, and I'm happy to share what we came up with to any other organizations. But we've been very particular on going about how we do things on that front. Just something else to consider in this whole range. So as I mentioned, photos really help you stand out. Here's a tweet deck. And if you're looking at a feed, you see how the big bold pictures or the little animations and the movement, how those really draw your eye more than the text. It's, again, a way for folks to, for you to slow the scroll in social media and have a post get attention by that little bit of movement or imagery. There's a lot of different ways to do that. You can add text to images, and there's some great free tools for doing that. This is one we did on the solar eclipse a couple years ago to draw attention to that we're going to do a live feed on the eclipse. Also for helping build awareness around certain days like World Oceans Day, that there's a big hashtag around, using good quotes on top of imagery and then connecting it back to your mission, something that's shareable, something that people connect to. As well as using an image to kind of get attention for some events or benchmarks. The top one, we used a very simple, clean image for a workshop we were doing on the difference between weather and climate. We were celebrating getting over 500 followers on the Instagram on the bottom one. And then also drumming up excitement about special events. So for Delaware Coast Day, one year we had a Teach Fleet at Coast Day, which was a collection of research vessels that someone had taken the time to recreate diligently in Legos. And it was an educational display that was just incredible. So we used that display and the Lego connection to kind of draw attention to all the other things that are going on Coast Day and doing a 40-day countdown. We did like every 5 days to the 10 days before, and then we did it every day. And we put Lego characters around different things with our clam chowder for the cook-off. We had a Lego shark and a bowl of chowder. That was just a fun way for folks to kind of see everything that was happening. Legos always get attention. and to help build up interest in an event that's coming up. There's also a lot of particular days that have hashtags. Throwback Thursday is a big one. It's also TBT on social. It's a nice way to connect with folks that have been with your program for a long time. This is one example. We were cleaning out our offices when moving last summer. And we had a bunch of old film reels about from the Chesapeake Bay work our filmmaker had done. So it was one way to connect with over 30 years of filmmaking in our program using that Throwback Thursday. We also use things like I mentioned, Tributary Tuesday, Watershed Wednesday. What Is It Wednesday is a fun one too, to do some close-ups and start those conversations, like with that trash collector post that I shared. And then takeovers can be fun too. So if you've got a Instagram feed going or a Twitter feed going, and then you've got a member of your team who's doing a special event, or a researcher who's going out in the field for the day, maybe even has a social savvy grad student who really enjoys using social media, have setting a day where they take over the feed and share their day and pictures and explanations is always a lot of fun. Some organizations also use their members. This was the National Marine Educators Association using Chris from Delaware Sea Grant to take over as a member their feed and talking about the work that he does for Sea Grant. So handing over the reins for a day to a unique voice or someone that can highlight a unique situation can be a fun way to use social. A couple quick tools that, again, these are all in a document that I like to use that make things super easy. You no longer have to get buried in Photoshop to put text on pictures or to make complex graphics. WordSwag is a free, easy to use smartphone app where you can use your own pictures, but they also have a beautiful collection of royalty-free images that are free to use. In that middle one, when I search ocean, these are some of the pictures that come up. It's a very easy way to put together a photo and text for a post. We had a fun post on deep sea microbes and the science behind them. And one of the quotes from one of the scientists was, do your teeth ever feel slimy? And that's because you have microbes in your mouth. So we were able to use that kind of interesting quote along with a picture we never would have had because it was from this free resource. That was attention getting that then connected back to this interview with a microbiologist that we had. Some other ones that these are all in the document as well. There's one called Over, which is just a quick video on Adobe Spark. Is if you've got access to Adobe programs, the Adobe Creative Suite, you have access to Spark and you can use that either on the web or via app. And then Typic and Canva are a couple other ones, but they're super easy to just pull stuff in and change fonts. Super easy. You can make a beautiful post in a couple seconds. You can actually collaborate with others using that one. And it's just, it's made life so much easier to make some of these posts that have a lot of visual bang, or to add a couple words, or even do, some of these have some short videos as well. And a lot of it's the same with the video. Video and animated, this is a whole Apple versus Mac thing, but GIFs or GIFs, that's a whole argument for another day. But there's little animated bits that you can use in social media to get attention. Again, a lot of this can be done with your smartphone. Smartphones are small, you can put them in interesting places. You can give kind of this hands-on feel. This was a teacher using a sandbox to show how, or to experiment with how you can change the geology of a location and get runoff in different places. But having those cell phones so small, so handy, you can put them just about anywhere and get some really interesting short clips to share on social. They also have really good tools like slow motion. This is my boy Boomer. I was testing slow-mo on the iPhone. This is him getting peanut butter. And when you go to slow-mo, you can really see how long his tongue is, which was kind of scary when we saw it for the first time. But in science, a lot of times, you have something that's happening really fast that's hard to capture, or you have something that's happening very slowly over time that you want to speed up, and it can be done very easily through time lapses or slow motion aspects in using things like your smartphone, the native camera within it, or things like GoPro. This was a quick example, Delaware Sea Grant, showing inundation from some basically sunny day flooding due to the spring high tides. So we're able to give a time frame. This was like a GoPro stuck on the signpost for a period of time. As well as providing the meteorologic information. I'm going to skip through a couple of these because we're getting short on time. But that's something that we could, it was a local place that people were familiar with that we could share with local officials and show some of the issues with the sunny day flooding, as well as exactly what some of the issues were and what needs to be considered for on the coastal resilience side. So it was something that was shareable on social media, but could also be used with policymakers to highlight issues and things that need to be thought about for the future. Video logs are another great way of kind of condensing short clips into a quick story. This was a quick example I did at a conference where they had an opening ceremony and I just grabbed my phone. I got some audio of folks singing and I added it to a couple short clips all within my phone to show how a short story could be done really easily. For a quick video recap. That's something that could be pulled together in 5 to 10 minutes using local sound, a couple of clips right on the phone. I'm using an iPhone app that gives a sense of place. You get a feeling for the event, you hear it, you see it, and it's something that's quick, could be shared on social media with others to kind of give a sense of place. Also, some of these apps will let you make a quick video from animated stills. So if you aren't comfortable shooting video, you can take some still pictures. And add a little text, and these apps will add some movement and you get a quick video out of it. Here's one from Oceans Day. That was a example of 3 pictures, one of the ocean, and then some actions that folks could do. And then the app did the rest, just making something that was visually interesting, that had a couple actions that we could then use the hashtag and share on the larger event of World Oceans Day while still having it branded as Sea Grant. On Instagram, as I mentioned, Instagram is really heavily photo and video based. It's a great way of sharing short videos. It used to be that the videos had to be 15 seconds, and then they went up to 60 seconds. And then they went even longer with Instagram TV, where you can do it now for a couple minutes. And now they've come full circle, and they just, last Wednesday, introduced Instagram Reels, which is back down to 15 seconds, and it's a way to compete with TikTok. But it just gives you a wider range of things that you can do on Instagram. With short video, you can do little recaps. This was a quick little announcement story that had to do with our education program, in which there was a big surprise in one of our schools. And it's just text on screen. So this had never happened in the program before, and it was really exciting for the teachers as well as our folks. So it was a quick way to announce it and show the exciting thing, as well as be shared out by the school districts. By putting text on screen and not worrying about voiceovers or interviewing anybody, a lot of times social media people watch it muted anyway. So by telling the story with just a couple quick sentences on top of the footage is an easy way for people to see it as well. Boomerang is another part of Instagram where you can just take this really, it takes a series of pictures and just animates it for a little movement, which can be really eye-catching in the feed as well. I'm gonna skip the recap because we talked about that a little bit. And then, as I mentioned, Instagram TV is for slightly longer, where you can actually have like a little social media series or TV series. Instagram is now owned by Facebook, so you can share the series directly to Facebook as well as you post. So this is another thing that came out of our coronavirus stay-at-home orders. Our aquaculture folks were trying to figure out a way to connect with viewers that are stuck at home as well. So we came up with the Stuck at Home, Shuck at Home on basically showing people how they can enjoy oysters in their own kitchens. And we now have 6 in the series of our aquaculture specialists, and as well as some fellows and partners who have filmed videos in their home kitchens showing preparation tips, as well as different recipes and preparations that people can try at home.
Hey, my name's Shannon Hood. I'm with the Maryland Sea Grant Extension Program at the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science. And today I'm going to show you how to shuck an oyster. So to shuck an oyster, we need a couple of supplies. We obviously need our oyster. We need an oyster shucking knife. And if you don't have one of these, you can order them online. You also need a towel or something to just keep the oyster stable while you're shucking it, and a glove for safety. So when we're shucking an oyster, what we're actually doing is we're releasing and severing a muscle that's holding this oyster closed. And that muscle sits right about here on the oyster. So to shuck, we're gonna set our oyster down on our towel. We're gonna hold it down nice and tight. And we're gonna take our shucking knife and put it just between those two valves down at the hinge. And we're just gonna apply a little bit of pressure and work that knife back and forth. And eventually, what's gonna happen is it's gonna move between those two valves. So once you feel that oyster release, the next step is to move the oyster shucking knife up along the top shells and sever that adductor muscle. And once you feel that muscle sever, you can just take the top shell right off. And the next step is just to go ahead and free the meat from the muscle on the bottom shell. So you'll just run your knife along that just to quickly sever the meat from that bottom shell. And that's it. And you're free to enjoy your oyster. Bon appetit.
So if you saw in the Pew Research, a whole lot of people are using social media and YouTube to learn how to do things and see how kind of the how-to videos tend to be a big percentage of what's viewed. So by having this series, we started with the shucking and some easy prep tips, and then moving into more complex recipes. The last one was on grilling oysters and some tips. So using that knowledge that people are looking for these types of videos, showing our expertise, connecting them with our extension agents that have that expertise, and making something useful and shareable for social. You can also take videos and take short clips out of it to make animated GIFs. Giphy is one that's very easy to use. If you have a video on YouTube or see something that's very useful, you can actually take that link over to Giphy. It's free to use, and you can choose what part of the video you want to turn into a little animated GIF, and you can do that very easily as well. Again, to add that little bit of movement to a social feed to pique curiosity or interest. This was one we did on using a rubber band to show how DNA works in a microorganism, and then we just took that little twisting movement and made an animated GIF from it. I'm going to move through. And another series for Delaware Sea Grant we did back when Instagram was just 15 seconds. We did a series called 15 Second Science, which is still going on now. And we challenged ourselves to get out little bits of useful information within that 15-second time frame that were short, informative, and shareable. Stuff that folks would use or are curious about, both within their watershed or to share the information from our experts. So some of them were showing how to take action to do something. And here's one on how to flip a horseshoe crab.
Do you know how to help a horseshoe crab that's stranded on the beach? Simply pick it up like a cereal bowl, never by the tail. Flip it over and place it at the water's edge, legs down.
And that was very, very widely shared because folks, it was something that they didn't know about and they didn't know how to deal with it, and they saw on their beaches. And so there's a whole lot of engagement with that. And then we also were able to link to all of our educational resources on horseshoe crabs. That was a great connection there. And then we also have had experts come in and talk about their work with coastal safety and did guest spots like this one.
Did you know waves carry energy across the ocean? And when they break on the beach, they release that energy. Even a 2 or 3 foot wave can knock you over with 500 pounds of force. That's the power of waves.
A fun way to get researchers involved and have them break down their science and get them down to a 15-second blurb. And that way, he's an engineer, and he was connecting his coastal dynamics work to beach safety. And we did a whole series of beach safety videos and a playlist that could be shared. Also included some local lifeguards and some partners. So they were useful, connected back to the science and research and our mission. So a couple other bits on here I'll just go through quickly that you can explore through the Prezi later. One is on infographics. It's a great way to share information in a visually understandable and interesting way. Research has also shown that many folks are visual learners and they build a deeper knowledge through this type of visual learning. There's examples from the National Aquarium, which has done some really, really cool ones. They've got a Valentine's Day one that's shared like crazy that has a lot of fun facts in it. But they're also easier and easier to do. You no longer have to worry about Photoshop or Illustrator to do these. And I've got some resources linked on Piktochart is a very easy one where you can drag and drop, and they've got great templates, and they've got a ton of different symbols that you can use. And you can change the colors, you can change the fonts, you can make it exactly how you want without having to use a very difficult to use graphics tool, because it is simply drag, drop, and then tweak, and you can add your own logo. There's a video to watch on that. But I've used Piktochart for everything. For some of the classes I've taught, I've used it to make the syllabus. And I find that students pay much more attention to the syllabus when it's kind of chunked into a more graphic way like this. Canva is another way to do that. It's another tool. It's low cost. Piktochart has a free option, and then you can upgrade. Canva, I pay a couple bucks a month to use, but I can do everything from social posts to videos to infographics on that. And this is all the design types they have in there. You can even pull your data in and do some really beautiful graphs. Everything from Venn diagrams to pie charts to more complex graphs. Also has some photo editing in there as well. So it's a great tool, totally online based. And it has plenty of images and graphics and icons that you can pull in and use. And then I've got some inspiration section or some great places to go to get some different ideas. I always like looking at what different groups are doing visually. Got some links into some NASA visualization, because they do things extremely well in many different ways on social media, as well as they've got a great visualization library that's open for public use. And we've also started to play with 360 and immersive views. 360 cameras are now much lower in cost and easier to use. You used to have like this whole build out of GoPros where you shot 8 GoPros at one time that are all connected, and then you had to kind of link everything together and stitch everything together, and it was very time consuming and very challenging, and all the cameras had to work. But now there are handheld 360 cameras that capture beautiful 360 views that are under $400 that can capture some really interesting stills and video to give a sense of place. This is one video view recently did of some water quality testing in the field. They were doing some testing of water to see if there are any chemical clues in there to trace it back to septic discharge, but to give folks kind of a quick view of the type of natural forested streams that they were testing in and how they were pulling those water samples. And then they are very visually interesting to use in social aspects. You can do these tiny planets, which get curiosity. This is the wind turbine at Delaware. You can do short videos where you kind of spin around and get the whole view. This was my class in the forest. You get the full view of the class in the forest, and then can zoom out. All this can be done in the app in a matter of seconds and then shared right to social media. They were visiting an old growth forest, so it gives a sense of place if everybody was there, and you've got that little bit of motion that's interesting. A bit on VR, we've done some of this kind of immersive field trips, and I've got some links to the Delaware stuff in the document as well. I just wanted to touch on story maps as the last thing, because this is something that we've started to experiment with in Maryland Sea Grant. We have Chesapeake Quarterly, which is our longtime magazine, which has been a print publication for quite some time. The spring, first issue of the year, we tried something a bit different, and we went fully digital using ArcGIS story maps, which are a very visual way of posting and telling stories, in which you can incorporate a variety of images as well as video and pull them into collections. So this last clip I'm going to show you is what our latest issue looked like through the story map collection. You see the landing page there with the title and links to all the different stories. And then folks that went in there can go into the collection. They can go through the story by story. The first one is the editor's letter, and then can click through. We've got big, bold graphics and images. This is kind of an infographic showing the different geological areas of Maryland. Where this would have been a static centerfold, in this aspect, it's more interactive and engaging. This shows how groundwater works. And then we've got a couple different stories. This was the septic story, which included graphics. We were able to embed that 360 video there, as well as have these big photo collections that show the whole process. So it's a very visual way of having stories online and using different elements. We're still looking at the numbers for this, and we've sent out a survey to all of our print subscribers to get more information about what they thought of this way of doing things, and suggestions for the future. And we'll see what worked, what didn't work, if folks still want it in the print format or some sort of combination. Again, looking at the numbers and getting feedback, and continuing what's successful and finding different ways to do things that aren't. So I know that was a whole lot of information packed into one 2-hour session, but as I said, I really wanted to give an idea of all the different possibilities and to kind of stoke some ideas and seeing what's possible and thinking about what's possible, and then kind of delving deeper into some of these various aspects, using the Google document and some of the resources I've put there. And then I'm happy to answer via email here. That's my Twitter and Instagram handle. You can reach me through the Maryland Sea Grant handle, which is the same for everything. Bounce ideas off, talk more in depth about any of these, please reach out, and I'll be happy to have some conversations.
Thank you so much, Lisa. What a wealth of information. I was trying to do as you had suggested and just listen. And then I was every once in a while, oh, I need to write that down. I need to write that down. So just again, so folks know, we'll get the Google Doc and this Prezi out to you as soon as I get the recording with captions posted. So hopefully in the next couple of days. Lisa, there's a couple questions in the chat. Would it be okay if we I'm thinking if I have you answer them like by typing instead of live, unless folks want to hang on for a minute or two here. Looks like we got a lot of
whatever works. I'm happy to stick around and answer them real quick.
Okay, well here there's four in here.
Yep.
So, one of them is any suggestions about sanitizing the microphones, or do you just use the new fuzzy screen every time and throw away the used ones?
So yes, microphones. We wiped them down. We had, we saw the person on the chair. We used lav mics, and we had the it connected to the back of the chair, so they didn't have to touch anything except for the clip. And then the clip and the mic got wiped down between each person. So we really didn't have the foam on there. It was just a wipeable surface. We had to deal with a little extra air noise due to that, but there were a whole lot of kind of balances we had to make on that. So it was a lot of disinfecting and wiping. The other thing could have done was a boom mic, but our institution decided that we needed to be 10 feet apart rather than the CDC 6 foot. And we didn't have a boom mic that could reach the 10 foot. So we had to go with a lav mic on the interviews.
Fair enough. Thank you. The next one is any app that you can upload your org's branded font or typography as well.
Yes, several of them allow you to do that. That's one of the reasons why I upgraded the Canva app, where I pay a little bit each month. It allows me to do the complete branding kit. So I've got our logo and I've got our colors and our fonts pre-saved in there, and then I can use them to make sure our branding stays consistent. And Adobe Spark will allow you to do that too if you use the Creative Suite.
That's awesome. And there's a tip in here from Cassandra who says that if you're a nonprofit, you can apply to receive premium Canva for free. Nice. And then, just like you said, then you can upload the fonts and logos in there. So nonprofits, put your ears out there. One other question from Kit Hastings. How do you ensure that your social media meets accessibility guidelines for your organization?
So fortunately, all the different platforms have really stepped up on that front. On Instagram, you can now easily put in alt text, which we do for every image. Before I post it, I put in the alt text description, as well as for the video. We go back in and make sure that, like on YouTube, we've got all the closed captioning in and that it's correct before we make things public. There's also within the document, there's an app that allows you to actually do closed captioning kind of as you talk on video. I saw one of the politicians use it on their Instagram, and then they actually mentioned what it was. So I took note of it. So for quick videos like on Instagram, you can use that app to have a quick text on screen with what they're saying as well. So the different platforms, Twitter as well, allows you to put in alt text.
Yes, I just noticed that yesterday.
Yeah. And I have a section on accessibility in the doc as well.
Oh, awesome.
Because that's very important, especially for those of us that are federally funded.
Yeah, indeed. Well, that was awesome. I see lots of thank yous and excellent information and good kudos. So we'll save that chat and make sure you get that, Lisa.
Awesome.
Again, thank you for your time. Thanks everybody for joining. Really great to have folks from such a wide area to be learning, and looking forward to sharing these resources with you so you can put these things into action. You make it sound so easy. I'm not sure if I'm convinced.
The learning curve on a lot of these is very small. It's just gotten easier and easier and easier, which makes it more exciting because it's more accessible to more people to use for education and outreach, where it used to be you really had to rely on extra people. But so many of these apps, the last 2 years, it's really gotten it's exciting. But it's overwhelming at times. It's like, oh, I could do this, or I could do this, or I could do this. And then it's the stepping back and thinking about what's going to be most effective, what's been working, and what can I create that I can use on several platforms and use in different ways.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody has more questions.
Alrighty.
So I think we're good. So thank you. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Do the same. And you've got those other links, and let me know if you need anything else from me or if you have any other questions. I said I'm happy to chat with folks in different ways if they've got questions or follow-ups, or particularly because so many programs are so different. That's why it's like trying to think very broadly about all the different aspects and how folks can use it in different ways.
Right. No,